Ladies and gents, welcome to another Punk Politics with me, Aid Thompsin. So, here's an interesting article, and by interesting, I mean hysterical, clearly. Canada's woke nightmare is a vision of Britain's future. Like, so much is said about the woke mind virus, isn't it? But we never really focus any attention on what's happened to right-wing minds, do we? Like, what happened to you, Uncle Rob? You used to sit down and talk to me about the 70s. Now I can barely ask you about the weather without it descending into COVID and chemtrails. Anyway, yeah, the woke mind virus. Always makes me laugh, man. Like this idea that 1 billion or so people have been infected with this wokey way of thinking. They're brainwashed, guys. It's dangerous, and what's to be done about this contagious, dangerous, brainwashed, indoctrinating, wokey mind virus? Because that is a compelling, alluring, sinister story. It's more interesting, isn't it, than the simpler truth, which is just that some people think a pride flag is all right. Some people, this will blow your mind, some people who wouldn't even particularly want a gay son or a gay daughter, even they don't think a pride flag is worth publicly embarrassing themselves over. Anyway, this article is in the highly regarded former newspaper of record, The Telegraph, and it is a gem. Canada's woke nightmare is a vision of Britain's future. It says, drug decriminalisation, gender ideology, and legal euthanasia. The country seems to have adopted every policy on the progressive wish list. Wow. That does sound like a nightmare. I mean, Jesus, I can identify how I wish. I'm not being judicially punished if I fall into an addiction cycle. And if I want to end my own life, through perhaps a debilitating terminal illness or something, I'm empowered to take that decision for myself.
You what? You can't do that.
Why not?
Because life is a precious gift. You're not God. It's not the state's business to go around taking lives.
Weren't you just campaigning for the return of the death penalty last week?
She's evil.
Anyway, this is just the latest Telegraph travel blog by doom writer Stephen Edgington, who, after San Francisco, has now brought his joy unto Vancouver, Canada, one of the country's most liberal cities. He says, possession of up to 2.5 grams of hard drugs, including heroin, cocaine and fentanyl, has now been legalised in the city as part of a 3-year experiment which began in January this year. Well, okay. He says if the aim was to combat the opioid crisis that already beset the city, then it appears there is still much to be done. Yeah, probably about another 2.5 years, I'd have thought, as vast tent cities line the streets, patrolled by roaming zombie-like drug addicts. So it's seemingly having little immediate effect combating the city's drug problems. It hasn't worked instantly, guys. Always amazes me how the same newspapers, the same faces who preach so much patience with some things are so testy and eager with others. Like getting the national debt down? Oh no, just give it time. Inflation is still high, guys.
Just give it a chance, you bloody eager beaver.
Brexit's a disaster.
Well, that's because it's not done yet. It's not finished. It wasn't done properly. You just got to wait. Just be patient. Just wait a bit.
Meanwhile, with a radical new drug policy, what are we 7 months in? And they're like,
well, why hasn't this instantly solved it?
As we filmed on Hastings, epicenter of Vancouver's homelessness crisis, I witnessed a topless man shoot a needle into his arm 5 feet from me. Though it wasn't quite as bad as San Francisco, where my cameraman and I came under attack from angry vagrants. So first up, can we just acknowledge the fact that if you want to go see a topless person with track marks, you can just go see that in England. It's called Angels in Hastings. £7 entry. Knock yourself out. But seriously, fentanyl, crack, heroin, they are all not decriminalised here, right? They're all illegal in the UK. Punishable potentially by years in prison. And that is a criminalisation programme I'm guessing the Telegraph readers would rather amp up than relax. I mean, I'm reasonably confident. Most of them would actually quite like to see a sort of prohibition on steroids approach to it. Although, full disclosure, steroids are also technically a classified drug and injected. So I don't know, maybe you're getting yourself in a bit of a quandary there, lads. But the point is clear. Edgington doesn't appear to be a fan of drug decriminalisation because of this, public injecting going on. But the UK hasn't decriminalised those drugs, but you could still go and see someone injecting them if you really wanted to. Like, I've seen that in Hackney. Like, it's happening now in the UK. So how is people publicly injecting themselves a sign of Britain's nightmarish woke future when it's already Britain's non-decriminalisey present? I mean, not wishing to labour the point here, but look at the US, right? Which also jails its addicts. In America, a first-time possession of fentanyl can get you over a year in jail, which makes this Telegraph piece look kind of ridiculous, because it's like, oh, look, if you decriminalise, it could be this bad. And I'm like, well, in the US, they're criminalised, and I think we're all aware that the tent city opioid problems over there are far worse. The second thing about this that I love, right, is I love the acknowledgement that he and his cameraman were attacked in California. He flies into this town, he runs around with his tabloid raincoat, pointing his cameras at people, microphones. No permission slips for the people that he's filming. He's just filming them like they're zoo animals. Oi, come, look at that one. Look, he looks desperate, doesn't he? Oh, look at her! Look, right? She looks like she needs some help, doesn't she? And then when they snap, they don't want to be your performing seal here. But this is their life. Maybe they don't want the world to see them at their most vulnerable. Then they get angry at him. They start shouting stuff at his car and throwing little bottles and stuff. And he's like, God, they're so uncivilized, aren't they? And it's like, right, yeah. The total lack of support structures to help these people. This sort of neo-Victorian dismissal of an underclass. Like that's not the problem. It's not the low tax, me before everyone else, selfish right-wing ideology that's at fault here. The absence of mental health facilities and rehab centres. None of that is to blame. You guys, you're all faultless. The problem here is this is what happens when you let woke run amok. The San Francisco piece is fun, by the way, and clearly this is Edgington's MO. He jets into these places and points out the drug users. Ugh. Just as a side note, I know flying's expensive now. So I don't know, maybe could somebody tell the Telegraph that they could save on their corporate airfare if they just flew him into Westminster? Anyway, this is also from that San Fran piece. My cameraman and I had been filming homelessness on the streets of San Francisco, America's most liberal city, for a Telegraph documentary when we came under attack. We'd been filming homeless people without their consent, like they were nothing, like the filthy pleb bit part extras to my own biopic that they were. When they seemed to take exception. As I filmed from our car, a man by a tent spotted my camera from across the road. He shouted an expletive at me. I bet it was c***. Before we drove off and hit a red light no less than 100 yards away. The man whistled to his homeless gang closer to us, indicating to them that we were to be targeted. And suddenly our vehicle was under siege. And all we did was treat them with entitlement, disrespect, and utter contempt. Missiles were thrown, splattering our car. The back windshield was vaporized. Jeepers. Within an hour, we had driven our car back to the hire company, worrying about the inevitable cost of a replacement. But our anxiety turned out to be misplaced. The rental agent said he sees 10 of these a day and gave us an upgrade for free. The rental agent sees 10 of those a day. An inner city rental, he probably rents out 10 to 20 of them a day, no? And what, half of them come back with dents and no windshield? And the guy's just like, don't worry about it. We'll take the hit. Absolutely we will. Yeah, putting 10 of our cars, half of our fleet, into the repair shop every single day. They're like, wait, are you sure? Are you sure we don't have to pay you the money to fix this? And they'll be like, no, don't worry about it. No, it's fine. Because I see, 10 of them every single day, the cost of repairing them, it's built in, right? It's just the environment we're in. I just make sure that there's adequate process and maintenance and repair bills all built in. You know, like it's my responsibility to oversee and manage the problem. Right. You know, like much like if there were a community of drug addicts who were constantly getting high and causing problems, that would be the responsibility of the local authority, right? To look at the social drivers for those problems. Maybe put in repair facilities for the, rehab facilities. That would be their responsibility. To put in structures and facilities to treat those affected, right? No, I insist. How much is it? Well, it's going to be $2,000. I don't care. I insist. That's when you know the hate runs deep, isn't it? When you'd rather pay the $2,000 to fix the rental than admit there might be some community responsibility here.
What are you talking about?
Never mind. Seriously, like, do you as a viewer, do you believe that Stephen Edgington took his rental car back to the hire company with the windshield blown out? And do you believe that the guy was like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. I see these 10 times a day and also have an upgrade. Like, really? Did that really happen? Elsewhere in the original article, it's not just the homeless who patrol the streets of Vancouver. Chris Elston, better known online as Billboard Chris, campaigns against the imposition of gender ideology on children, whether through Canada's education system or via dangerous operations. As his nickname suggests, Chris walks around Vancouver wearing signs protesting gender ideology, encouraging lively debates with passers-by, which he then puts on Twitter. Okay, so can we just, pause for thought, just for a moment? Can we just take a moment to reflect on how far the Telegraph have this used to be a serious newspaper. They broke the expenses scandal, the collapse of Barings Bank. Now they seem to operate in a sort of Russell Brand-esque conspiracy realm. Everything's a woke mind virus, or jab skepticism, or climate science denial, or the deep state. And of course, now here we are in an investigative piece, which traditionally you'd expect to be looking to uncover the truth about something, right? But no, we're not factoring in the context and looking at things like the success of reducing homelessness in Portugal when they decriminalised their drugs. We're not asking trans people what they think about these initiatives. We're not asking recovered addicts what they make of decriminalisation. So what are we doing? We're following around some guy called Billboard Chris, this trans-obsessed sandwich board lunatic who spends his life wandering Vancouver encouraging lively debates with passers-by.
Like heckling?
Yeah.
Oh, you do? Oh, great. Well, you're a big-eared, buck-toothed twat badger who thinks he's way funnier than he actually is, you fucking idiot. Aye, you will never be loved.
Is the market for this stuff that big for the Telegraph? Really? Is it for this sort of content? Anyway, so the piece moves away from drug decriminalisation and addiction and moves into the transphobia and this sandwich board, Billboard Chris guy, which, I don't know, if it were me and I was trying to forge a career as a journalist, I think I'd probably take a moment if I found myself associating with sandwich board nutters. Even if I, Stephen Edgington, am not currently a full-blown conspiracy theory nutjob, what must I look like to the wider world hanging out with this guy who looks like he's about 2 Bud Lights away from living in a T-junction shack shouting at traffic about the Masons, would I want to be associated with this nutter? Probably not. So maybe I, Stephen Edgington, should reevaluate how I wish to present myself if I want to be a credible journalist. Anyway, then of course we get onto some scare stories, one of which is this Indian guy, Nirunjan, who emigrated to Canada but then got fired for refusing to take the vaccine.
Drink!
And then, so says Edgington, Nirunjan's son was pressured to wear girls' clothes for a day at the primary school, something to do with promoting cross-dressing and changing attitudes. Which, look, I can find no record of that story, that school, ever. It doesn't mean that it didn't happen, but, it seems a bit over the top to me, a primary school forcing 8-year-old boys to wear girls' clothes for the whole day, with no opt-out, Did that really happen, Stephen? Did it? Come on. Be honest. Like, what happened next? Did Narunjan give his kid the day off and then a free upgrade? Is that what happened? How many of these kids did you see that were forced to wear the other? Was it 10 a day? And then finally, we get to the euthanasia bit, you know? And it's funny, isn't it? Because it's like a piece that starts off clutching its pearls over a progressive wish list is itself a sort of telegraph tick box exercise. You got all the hits here, haven't you? All the search terms to get those clicks. Transphobia, COVID jab skepticism, anti-wokeness. All wrapped up in this sort of weird, voyeuristic, scornful frame. It's one of filming people on the street and heckling them. It's one of pointing cameras at homeless people and feigning shock when they take exception. It's a sort of diatribe that comes from a kind of right-wing mind virus. One that avoids the stats on decriminalisation, avoids the studies on the mental health impact of when you embrace trans rights. It's one of just no stats, no studies, no science. It's just, you know, anecdotals and fear and symbolism and woke. Anyway, what do you guys think? Do you think Canada is a sort of, you know, futuristic dystopian nightmare that should serve as a warning to the rest of us? Do you think that's where Britain is headed? Or do you think the problems it's facing are actually very, very similar problems to the ones that are being faced by every other Western liberal democracy, regardless of their more liberal policies? As always, let me know in the comments below, where I also encourage lively debate.
Oh, I see what you did there. And it was shit.